Hej och välkomna till NTD Nyheter. Jag heter Dan Alfjorden. Här är våra rubriker. Vad betyder Trumps seger i New Hampshire? Bidens utmanare drar tillbaka planerat avhopp. EU-resolution uppmanar Kina att upphöra med förföljelsen av Falun Gong. Prisutdelning för den 6:e internationella NTD-tävlingen i realistiskt måleri. Specialserie visar Kinesiska kommunistpartiets brott, den stora svälten. Hur ska vi tolka Trumps seger i primärvalet i New Hampshire i förra veckan? Och vad väntar härnäst för de två republikanska kandidaterna? Vi tar en titt.
Förre presidenten Donald Trump vann republikanernas primärval i New Hampshire med drygt hälften av rösterna. Han slog Nikki Haley tvåsiffrigt som hade 43% av rösterna. Det är ett starkt resultat för den tidigare presidenten, men primärvalet avslöjade också några potentiella sårbarheter för honom. Resultaten visar att Trump har en särskild svaghet hos oberoende och moderata väljare, en demografisk grupp som hans konkurrent Haley sökte stöd hos inför primärvalet i New Hampshire. AP Vodcast, en undersökning genomförd av nyhetsbyrån Associated Press och NORC Center, visade att vissa väljare var oroade över Trumps valbarhet i det allmänna valet i november. New Hampshire är unikt eftersom det tillåter oregistrerade och oberoende väljare att rösta i primärvalen. Vodcast fann att mer än 4 av 10 av GOPs primärvalsväljare inte är anslutna till något parti. Detta lockar väljare som inte nödvändigtvis är partilojala. Av dessa väljare valde endast 1 av 5 Trump. Haley kan se dessa siffror som en seger. Hon planerar att fortsätta sin kampanj.
New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation.
Trump är fortfarande det överväldigande valet bland republikanska registrerade väljare. Även de som röstade emot honom tror att han i slutändan kommer ta hem nomineringen. Enligt Vodcast tror 8 av 10 republikanska väljare, inklusive mer än hälften av Haleys anhängare, att Trump kommer att representera partiet i november.
And she was up and I said, wow, she's doing like a speech like she won. She didn't win, she lost. And you know...
Valet flyttas nu till Nevada där Trump och Haley kommer att delta i separata evenemang. Nästa gång de möts igen är den 24 februari i South Carolina, en delstat där Haley tjänstgjorde som guvernör i 6 år. Demografiskt kommer delstaten att vara mycket mer lik Iowa med en stor befolkning av evangeliska kristna. En demografisk grupp som ställde sig bakom Trump i presidentvalen 2016 och 2020. South Carolinas guvernör Henry McMaster har redan ställt sig bakom Trump inför New Hampshire. En seger i South Carolina kan bli avgörande för båda kandidaterna inför Super Tuesday den 5 mars.
Den demokratiska kongressledamoten Dean Phillips planerar inte längre att lämna presidenttävlingen. Den 23 januari sa han att det finns ett enormt behov av att hålla denna utmaning igång. Demokraten från Minnesota hoppas kunna visa president Bidens svaghet genom att få mer än 20% av rösterna i New Hampshire och kan få stöd från en tungviktare. NTDs Arlene Richards berättar mer.
I want to wake people up.
Demokraternas presidentkandidat Dean Phillips har ändrat sin strategi från att lämna tävlingen senast den 5 mars till att stanna kvar så länge det behövs. I november förra året sa han ett inlägg på sociala medier: om min kampanj inte är gångbar efter den 5 mars kommer jag att avsluta den. Men på tisdagen sa han följande till CNN.
I have a conviction that Joe Biden's going to lose. And if anybody looks at the data really objectively, I mean, he's going to. And someone had to do it.
I augusti förra året krävde Phillips upprepade gånger ett konkurrensutsatt primärval istället för att Biden kampanjar utan motståndare. När han gick med i tävlingen i oktober berättade han för CBS att han inte trodde att Biden kunde vinna över Trump.
Look at the numbers. All I'm asking people to do is look at the numbers. All we have to go on is polling. It's imperfect, but the numbers are horrifying.
Phillips säger att han försöker få igång något i New Hampshire eftersom Biden inte gör någonting. Den senaste Emerson-mätningen visar att Biden leder över Phillips med 45 procentenheter i New Hampshire, 61% mot 16. Phillips förutspår att han kommer att få över 20% på tisdag, men säger detta om den sittande presidenten.
Joe Biden should be at 80%. Everybody knows him. If he's a strong candidate, he should get in that range.
Men Biden är inte med på valsedeln i New Hampshire. Demokraternas nationella kommitté ändrade sitt första primärval från New Hampshire till South Carolina och nu kan Biden bara vara ett inskrivningsalternativ. Phillips får stöd från några tunga namn. New Hampshires största tidning, Union Leader, stödde Phillips på måndagen och kallade honom ett rimligt alternativ till Biden. På måndagen fick Phillips också stöd från den tidigare demokratiska presidentkandidaten Andrew Yang. Han sa att Biden inte är rätt kandidat för att vinna över Trump. I ett banbrytande beslut uttalar sig EU-parlamentet mot förföljelsen av den andliga metoden Falun Gong i Kina. Detta sker efter en utövares innerliga vädjan om frigivning av sin far, som har förts bort och dömts av det kinesiska kommunistpartiet. EU-parlamentet antog den 18 januari en resolution som uppmanar Kina att upphöra med förföljelsen av Falun Gong-utövare. NTDs Frankrikes korrespondent David Vives berättar mer om detta. Falun Gong är en andlig metod som bygger på fysiska övningar och en moralisk lära som betonar principerna sanning, medkänsla och tålamod och som har utsatts för förföljelse i över 24 år i Kina. EUs resolution följer på Le Bin Dings kontakter med EUs kommission och parlament där han berättade om sin fars svåra situation. Dings far, en teodlare nära den kinesiska hamnstaden Richao, blev bortförd och dömd på grund av att han utövar Falun Gong. EU-parlamentarikern Michael Galler svarade på Le Bins uppmaning. Europaparlamentet insåg allvaret i situationen och inledde en partiöverskridande resolutionsdebatt för att ta upp förföljelsen av Falun Gong, inklusive fallet Yuan Ding.
Today we focus on the Falun Gong practitioners. We demand an end to the prosecution and the harassment. We demand an immediate and unconditional release of all Falun Gong practitioners.
Galler uppmanar till personliga sanktioner mot alla personer som är inblandade i förföljelsen.
We demand, for instance, not to issue visa to them, and if some of them has any accounts abroad, they should be seized.
För den slovakiska parlamentsledamoten Miriam Lexman är lidandet och förföljelsen av Falun Gong-utövare en symbol för KKP:s tyranni.
It's absolutely unacceptable that these people are prosecuted just because they want to practice Falun Gong. They are tortured. The behavior of the Chinese Communist Party towards its own citizen is unacceptable.
Ding Le Bin anser att detta är ett stort steg framåt på vägen till en frigivning av hans far och minst 70 andra Falun Gong-utövare som står inför ett liknande öde.
I want to please you to continue take efforts in engaging, ending the forced organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners and the whole generation in general, because the persecution of Falun Gong practitioners is really a crime against humanity.
Galler åtar sig att vidarebefordra Le Bins vädjan om hjälp till EU-kommissionären och att driva på för konkreta åtgärder mot den kinesiska regimen. NTD avslutade sin 6:e internationella tävling i realistiskt måleri med en prisceremoni. Evenemanget hölls på Salmagundi Club i New York City, där tävlingens målningar har ställts ut. Totalt 60 bidrag från 20 länder runt om i världen valdes ut till den slutliga utställningen. Efter en granskning av domarna delades inget guld ut i år, men 3 silver och 5 brons delades ut. Triptyken Buddha's Grace, som skapats av 3 konstnärer från Japan och Taiwan, vann tävlingens högsta pris, silvermedaljen. Verket visade teman av samtida mytologiska scener.
The biggest challenge is that these paintings are very large, and then there are also many characters. At the beginning of the design process, in order to put all 3 paintings together as one, we had to put a lot of effort into the planning. Each of us probably has at least 20 to 30 sketches for each of our works.
Detta verk målat av Shinru Yang från Taiwan med titeln Choosing Conscience Amid Political Unrest vann Profound Humanities Award. 6 konstnärer tog också hem utmärkelsen Outstanding Teknik. 2 konstnärer fick utmärkelsen Outstanding Youth och 35 konstnärer fick hedersomnämnanden. Som en av världens främsta tävlingar i realistiskt måleri lyfter det traditionella konstverket fram begreppen dygd, renhet och skönhet.
This competition is really unique in that it places an emphasis on really letting classical aesthetics and ideals of truth and beauty.
Domarna uppmuntrade de tävlande att fortsätta att vässa sina färdigheter och samtidigt hålla fast vid idéer och teman som kommer främja traditionens återkomst och inspirera kommande generationer.
And I'm really grateful that there's a wonderful competition that NTD puts on that we can all get together and view and enjoy one another's work, and always worth it to come, and it's fantastic.
En samlingsbok med årets målningar kommer att släppas efter utställningens slut. Och vi är strax tillbaka.
En föreställning som verkligen betyder något. För var och en av oss. Detta är vad du har väntat på. Köp biljetter nu på chenyun.com.
Mellan 1959 och 1962 drabbades Kina av historiens dödligaste svältkatastrof. Kommunistpartiet har försökt lura världen genom att hävda att det var 3 år med naturkatastrofer. I själva verket handlar det om att kommunistpartiet 1958 inledde folkkommunrörelsen och det huvudlösa stora språnget. Vi kommer nu att visa massmord i öst del 2 i specialserien Hur kommunismens spöke styr världen. Filmen är baserad på boken How the Spectre of Communism is Ruling Our World.
B. Atrocities of the Chinese Communist Party. From 1949, the year the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, regime was established, to 1966, tens of millions of Chinese lost their lives in the campaign to suppress counter-revolutionaries, the 3 anti- and 5 anti-campaigns, the anti-rightist campaign, and the Great Famine caused by the Great Leap Forward. This period was followed by bloody struggles within the CCP. As a new generation of Chinese, raised to be atheist wolf cubs, indoctrinated in the education and party culture of communism, came of age, the communist specter launched a campaign of even more rampant killing and destruction to wipe out 5,000 years worth of traditional Chinese culture. The Great Chinese Famine. Between 1959 and 1962, China experienced the world's deadliest famine. To deceive the world, the CCP still claims it was, quote, 3 years of natural disasters. In fact, in 1958, the CCP had rashly begun the People's Commune movement and the Great Leap Forward campaign. These wild schemes, which depleted grain stocks and decimated Chinese agricultural production, were supported by a deluge of false reports written by officials across all levels of leadership, from rural regions to the cities. The CCP used these reports as justification for collecting grain from the peasants, who were forced to turn in their food, seeds, and animal feed to the regime. The CCP's administrative organs at all levels sent teams to the countryside. They used torture and interrogations to squeeze the last morsels of food from the doomed peasants. Following the example set by the Soviet communists, the CCP prevented villagers from entering cities in search of food, causing the mass death of families and even whole villages. Cannibalism was widespread, and the corpses of famine victims littered the countryside. When peasants were caught stealing to survive, they were killed. The grain seized by the government was traded for large amounts of Soviet weaponry, or for gold that the CCP used to pay off debts, as it turned a blind eye to the loss of Chinese lives. In just 3 years, the Great Chinese Famine had wiped out tens of millions of people. The Cultural Revolution's fanatical slaughter and cultural genocide. On May 16, 1996, the CCP published the Notice of the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party, which marked the beginning of the Cultural Revolution. In August, with the children of high-ranking CCP cadres leading the way, students from secondary schools in Beijing formed a band of Red Guards. The mob went on a rampage across Beijing in a frenzy of ransacking, assault, and killing. By the end of the month, known as Red August, thousands of people in Beijing had been murdered. In the Beijing district of Daxing, 325 people were killed in 6 days, between August 27th and September 1st, across 48 production brigades of 13 people's communes. The dead varied in age from just 38 days to 80 years, and 22 families were wiped out completely. The Red Guards beat their victims with clubs, as well as stabbed or strangled them. They killed infants and toddlers by stepping on one leg and tearing the child in two. As the specter of communism directed people to beat and kill, it erased their human compassion, brainwashing them with the slogan of, quote, treating the enemy with the numb cruelty of the harsh winter. With every crime against humanity, the CCP displaced the traditional culture and moral virtue of the Chinese. Poisoned by party culture, many people became tools of murder. When most people see or learn about the bloodthirsty deeds of the totalitarian communist state, they are at a complete loss as to how anyone could descend into such inhuman barbarism. The truth behind this is that they were possessed by rotten demons and degenerate spirits controlled by the communist specter. Estimating the ravages of the Cultural Revolution is a daunting task. Most studies suggest a minimum death toll of 2 million. R.J. Rummel, an American professor who has researched mass killing, wrote in his book China's Bloody Century that the Cultural Revolution claimed the lives of 7.73 million people. Dong Baoshun, an associate professor of China's Shandong University, and Ding Longjia, deputy director of the Shandong Party History Research Office, co-authored a 1997 book titled Exonerate the Innocent, Rehabilitate the Wrongly Accused and Sentenced. It quoted Ye Jianying, the vice president of the CCP Central Committee, as making the following statements during the closing ceremony of the Central Working Conference on December 13, 1978. Quote, 2 years and 7 months of comprehensive investigation by the Central Committee have determined that 20 million people died in the Cultural Revolution. Over 100 million suffered political persecution, and 800 billion yuan were wasted. According to the selected works of Deng Xiaoping from August 21st to 23rd, 1980, CCP leader Deng Xiaoping gave 2 interviews with Italian journalist Oriana Fallaci in the Great Hall of the People. Fallaci asked, quote, how many people died in the Cultural Revolution? Deng replied, quote, how many people really died in the Cultural Revolution? The figure is astronomical and can never be estimated. Deng described a typical case. Kang Sheng, the head of the CCP's secret police, accused the party secretary of Yunnan province, Zhao Jianmin, of treason and of being an agent of the Kuomintang. Not only was Zhao imprisoned, but his downfall also impacted 1.38 million people throughout the province, of whom 17,000 were persecuted to death and 60,000 were beaten to the point of disability. Unprecedented evil. The persecution of Falun Gong. Decades of murderous violence and atheist indoctrination by the Chinese Communist Party have taken a massive toll on the moral fabric of society, bringing it far below the standards gods require of humanity. Even many of those who still believe in gods are ignorant of genuine faith, since they are trapped in the sham religious organizations controlled by the CCP. Should the situation continue to degenerate, humanity will face certain extinction, as prophesied in the holy texts of every ancient civilization. During the spring of 1992, to restore human morality and provide a path to salvation, Mr. Li Hongzhi taught Falun Gong, also called Falun Dafa, a spiritual practice based on belief in the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Uncomplicated to learn, Falun Gong spread across China in a few short years. As practitioners, along with their relatives and peers, experienced miracles of improved health and character, tens of millions of people took up the practice in China and around the world. With so many people practicing cultivation and Falun Gong and holding themselves to higher standards, society began to rediscover its moral bearings. But the specter of communism is bent on preventing man from being saved by the Creator. For this reason, it destroyed traditional cultures and corrupted human moral values. Naturally, it sees Falun Gong as its greatest adversary. In July 1999, then CCP leader Jiang Zemin unilaterally ordered the systematic persecution of Falun Gong and its practitioners. In a brutal campaign that covered every corner of China, the CCP applied every method imaginable in its efforts to fulfill Jiang's directive. Quote, kill them physically, bankrupt them financially, and ruin their reputations. Party mouthpieces subjected the Chinese people to constant propaganda filled with hatred and slander of Falun Gong, rejecting its principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance in favor of falsehood, wickedness, and struggle. The evil specter brought society to new lows in moral degeneration. In an atmosphere of hatred and repression reactivated from dormancy, the Chinese people turned a blind eye to the persecution happening around them, betraying Buddhas and gods. Some sacrificed their conscience and participated in the campaign against Falun Gong, ignorant of the fact that they had damned themselves in the process. The communist specter did not limit the persecution to China. It silenced the nations of the free world, while the Chinese regime engaged in the frenzied jailing, murder, and torture of Falun Gong practitioners. Essentially bribed with economic incentives, the free world took in the party's lies, giving the persecutors free rein to commit the worst crimes. In the persecution of Falun Gong, the CCP introduced an evil never before seen: live organ harvesting. As the largest group of people imprisoned for their faith in China, Falun Gong practitioners are killed on demand, cut open on the operating tables of state and military hospitals, and their organs are sold for tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. On July 7, 2006, Canadian lawyers David Matas and David Kilgour, former Canadian Secretary of State Asia-Pacific, published a report titled Bloody Harvest: The Killing of Falun Gong for Their Organs. Examining 18 types of evidence, they shed light on the CCP's monstrosity, calling it, quote, a disgusting form of evil new to this planet. Matas and Kilgour, working with international investigators, published the report An Update to the Slaughter and Bloody Harvest in June 2016. Running over 680 pages and containing more than 2,400 references, it proved beyond any doubt the reality and scale of the live organ harvesting carried out by the Chinese Communist regime. On June 13, 2016, the U.S. House of Representatives unanimously passed Resolution 343, demanding the CCP bring an immediate end to the forced organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners and other prisoners of conscience. The lucrative organ transplant business sustained support for the persecution of Falun Gong and attracted clients from China and around the world, making them part of the CCP's mass murder. 4. Red Terror in Export. The introduction to the Black Book of Communism provides a rough estimate of the death tolls of communist regimes around the world. It verified a figure of 94 million, including the following: 20 million in the Soviet Union, 65 million in China, 1 million in Vietnam, 2 million in North Korea, 2 million in Cambodia, 1 million in Eastern Europe, 150,000 in Latin America, mainly Cuba, 1.7 million in Ethiopia, 1.5 million in Afghanistan, 10,000 due to, quote, the international communist movement and communist parties not in power. Apart from Russia and China, lesser communist regimes have shown themselves no less willing to engage in absolute evil. The Cambodian genocide is the most extreme mass murder carried out by a communist government. According to various estimates, the number of Cambodians killed by Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge regime ranges from 1.4 million to 2.2 million up to 1/3 of Cambodia's population at the time. Between 1948 and 1987, the North Korean communists killed more than 1 million of their own people through forced labor, executions, and internment in concentration camps. In the 1990s, famine killed between 240,000 and 420,000 people. In total, 600,000 to 800,000 North Koreans are thought to have died unnatural deaths between 1993 and 2008. After Kim Jong-un came to power, he committed more overt murders, with the victims including high-ranking officials and his own relatives. Kim has also threatened the world with nuclear war. In just 1 century, since the rise of the first communist regime in Russia, the evil specter of communism has murdered more people in the nations under its rule than the combined death toll of both world wars. The history of communism is a history of murder, and every page is written in the blood of its victims.
Detta var den andra delen av del 4 i vår specialserie Hur kommunismens spöke styr världen. För att se hela videon och tidigare delar, gå in på NTD Sveriges kanaler på YouTube, Facebook och Ganjing World. Tack för att ni har tittat och på återseende!